I'm a business person, a marketer, focusing on insights to drive businesses for a lot of companies and brands that you would have heard of. I'm also a vagipreneur, which a journalist once called me, which is a person in the business of female sexual health. My second favorite title ever was Vagenius, so you can tell me what you want. And I speak and teach on this topic, not just about sexuality. I'm not a teacher in the sense that Carol is, but I speak about women's driven businesses, I speak about women's sexuality, I speak about entrepreneurship, all as part of the work that I've done prior to becoming a vagipreneur and as long as I have. So the question when I was speaking to Stephen and Ellie that they said is, how did I get into this business? And I would say I was an accidental entrepreneur. I was accidental vagipreneur, actually. I was running my consulting business with my business partner of 15 years, who I started this business with as well. Minding my own business, and a venture capitalist handed us a business plan and said, why don't you and Mary look at this? So we're driving along, literally. She's always in charge of driving because she doesn't like the way I drive. And I'm reading her the business plan. And as I'm reading it out loud, I said, 43% of women have sexual concerns and difficulties? Wow, there are no products available to address it? You're kidding me. Doctors aren't talking about it, women aren't talking about it to their best friends, their aunts, their mothers, or their sisters. And here's a product that works. How hard could this be? We've marketed hemorrhoid cream. This cannot be that hard. So it literally was with that much information that we started to become interested in this category. And we had spent the previous 25 years of our career really focusing on women's driven businesses, as we say, from the tops of their heads to the tips of their toes. And this obviously fit in that landscape. So, exactly, and in between. Thank you. So, as we looked at this, and we come from the point of view of business consultants and strategists and people who try to innovate and grow businesses, so why should businesses care? Huge market. 43% of women have concerns or difficulties. Just to give you a sense, 31% of men have ED. 43% of women have sexual concerns and difficulties, and there's essentially nothing out there. So everybody agrees in the business world, in the scientific development world, that this is a huge market. And so the question is, who's going to be the first person to figure out a way to skin this cat and take advantage of this market opportunity? The second piece is this is one of the few areas that healthcare professionals don't talk about in the context of a visit. So it's astounding to us that only 3 to 5% of obstetricians and gynecologists, the people where you think you would talk about female sexuality, are addressing satisfaction. And I think those 3 to 5% are young female doctors in New York and LA, but I can't prove that. They're talking about a lot of other important issues. They're talking about disease prevention, they're talking about fertility, they're talking about infertility, they're talking about menopause, they're talking about a range of important issues. But it is very rare for a doctor or a physician, an op-gyn, to say, are you enjoying your sex life? What they will say is, any pain, any problems, and that's great, but it's not the whole story. And the last piece, and Emily stole a little bit of my thunder, but it's such a good piece I'd like to say it again, that there is actually scientific research that says that people who have an active, enjoyable, satisfying sex life, and they don't define what that means, obviously satisfaction is in the eyes of the beholder, not only do they look better, but they live longer. So it really is true that sex is good for you. Okay, there's a trick. Okay, so this is one of the things we like to show. It seems to be a great visual, so people understand the difference in complexity between male sexual response, see the one button, and female sexual response. And the expression, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, in communication, I'm sure some of you are familiar with that book. When it comes to sexuality, they might as well be from different galaxies. So take a look at this eye chart. I've given a lot of presentations and I've seen a lot. This one reminds me of where someone has a moving spreadsheet with numbers popping up and you're supposed to be able to follow it. But this is basically the accepted model of female sexual response, which is a complicated interaction between physiological, biological, social, contextual, behavioral, emotional elements. That's how it works. That's why it's so complicated, that's why he doesn't get it, and that's why sometimes she doesn't get it. So in layman's terms, what this chart means, and a clinician gave us this analogy and we love it, female sexual response is like a bus ride. Some women do not want to get on the bus. That is lack of desire. Some women get on the bus, and quite honestly, they do not enjoy the ride. It's too fast, it's too slow, they've seen that scenery before, it's bumpy, it's boring. That's lack of arousal. And for some women, they never get to their ultimate destination, which is lack of orgasm. And as any woman knows, and any person who's spoken to a woman knows, if all those pieces aren't working together, she's not running back to the station to find out when the next bus is leaving. So when you think about female sexual response, think about it in those terms: desire, arousal, and orgasm. There is a lot in the area of pain, which is generally surgically treated and is very important, but not covered in the satisfaction parts, which is what we really like to talk about. Literally, there's like a magic step and then it goes.
It's complicated.
I'm going to point to you. Would you mind driving? So I talked about the problem. I talked about desire, arousal, and orgasm. What causes this? Now, in a group of people who are interested in the aging population, it's very easy to say that one of the causes is change in hormones relative to menopause. God bless you. But there are also change in hormones relative to post-pregnancy. There are side effects, libido-lowering side effects of oral birth control. That one always amazes me, as talked about. The opportunity to have sex without fear of pregnancy might in fact dampen your interest in having sex. Strikes me as a bit ironic. The other one is the side effects of antidepressants. Again, maybe he or she is depressed because they have no interest in having sex. But there are accepted studies, and every patient who's put on an antidepressant, at least some of them, should be told by their physician that there's a chance that for some subset of the population, they will experience libido-lowering properties. These are not only things that affect the older population. What else? The realities of living with common lifestyle or medical conditions: diabetes, obesity, MS. The realities of cancer treatment, which cause, in many cases, a host of physical as well as psychological impacts. And of course, stress. So, show of hands, does anybody not see themselves in one of these categories? I'm not asking if you're having sexual satisfaction problems, but has anyone in this room ever had a period where they weren't stressed, or they've experienced? I'd like the stress-free people to raise their hands. So this is what we call, I'm not going to say it's an epidemic because you don't die from lack of sexual satisfaction, but it is culture-wide. Women 21 to 121. And I'm going to focus on women. I know there are a lot of issues with men, but as Carol mentioned, they're very well taken care of at this point. So he's smiling. He has 4-hour erections. He has access to a lot of medical care, a lot of options, and it makes him feel like a man. And I often at this part say, when I walk into a room primarily of women, I'm looking for the women who are looking for the partners with the 4-hour erections. Raise your hand. Where are you, ladies? I don't see anyone raising their hand. So the whole language around it, what is so ironic is the most brilliant side effect that is yelled loud in the commercials has become the greatest marketing tool for the men who they want to buy it. It's a $9 billion category. Just for those products, just for the erectile dysfunction pharmaceutical products. I told you earlier that 31% of men suffer from ED, 43% of women suffer from have sexual concerns or difficulties, which means at some point in their lives they're not going to enjoy some part of that bus ride. The women's market right now, and if I could be as expansive as possible and as generous as possible, the biggest that the estimates are that we see are maybe half of $1 billion, $500 million. And there are millions, which I'll show you on the next slide, of women, sorry, the slide after this, but leave this for a second, of women who have this need. People often refer to this as the Viagra for women, which it is, except for the fact that it's not a pill, it's not a drug, it's not systemic. But one of the things that's come up in society in this world of Viagra is this concept of Viagra wives. So as much as everyone talks about how important sex is, and it is, and as much as people talk about the fact that it's important to looking better, living longer, which it is, the reality is what Viagra has done is created an inequity in the bedroom. So there are couples who had accepted the fact that maybe that sexual intimacy or enjoyment wasn't part of their lives anymore. Well, he's now got Viagra. He's in business for potentially 4 hours. Nothing's changed for her. Her responsiveness hasn't changed. her desire hasn't changed, nothing has changed. So it's created a real dichotomy and potentially an even greater need for some options for women. Who are these women? 40 million women. When you take census data and you take quantitative data and you integrate them and you analyze them in a way that I think Hal would find appropriate from his former job, 40 million women aren't satisfied. That means 40 million women in the US this is just US. There's another 85 million in the 7 most developed pharmaceutical markets. 40 million women, when asked the question, are you satisfied? Could you be more satisfied? Are there things you would like to be different in your sex life? Raise their hand. We talked about the part about op guides. This is one of the few topics that women don't discuss. They talk about everything. They talk about their kids' poop. They talk about menopause. They talk about infertility. They talk about their grandchildren. They'll talk about anything. This is one of the few categories that we've ever seen working with women where they don't share about this with their friends, their mothers, or their girlfriends. And again, since our target is women 35 plus in committed relationships with our bullseye older than that, I'm not suggesting there's no one on earth who's talking about this, but just picture the scenario. Oftentimes, when you're with a friend, they know your partner. So if you express some dissatisfaction, we're not having sex often enough, or I'm not as satisfied as I used to be, and the next night you're out to dinner, that really feels like a betrayal of the intimacy of your relationship with your partner. So there are a lot of good reasons why it doesn't happen, but it's really important that it doesn't.